We are live from Twitter, from Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, but not you, LinkedIn. Not today, you said. There's a big red exclamation point over the LinkedIn on StreamYard for me right now. So I apologize, world. I hope that you will join me on Facebook and YouTube and these other wonderful social media channels for this awesome conversation we have for you today here on Whiskey Wednesday. I have the links plugged in. You can find them here in the comments. If you are looking for them, you can go on YouTube or Facebook and you can find us. There's the Facebook link. But I'm going to go ahead and just start getting into these topics because we have a lot planned for today. And so let's just get right into it. So first and foremost, we have Heather Monahan joining us today. And if you haven't followed Heather Monahan on LinkedIn, I would be quite surprised. But if you haven't, you should definitely go search her name right now, follow her, because you're going to get inspired by what you hear from her. And before we get into that, I want to introduce you all to the prizes. I'm not going to show you our regular agenda and go through the 4 topics with you. Yes, for the promotional materials, I did get the conversation sort of into 4 topics, but really it's like 10 different questions. And there's just a lot to cover. So let's just start plugging in winners. So if you want to enter to win some prizes today for this special lunch hour, enter Data Ghost. So you're going to want to tag them. And if I guess you're not on LinkedIn, so you can't tag them. And if they're not on the other platforms, just don't put the @, just put Data Ghost to enter to win. So if they are on Facebook, yeah, give them a tag. The only thing that matters is that it's spelled out in the comments. So DATAGHOST in the comments to enter to win this course from Heather Monahan. It's her Confidence Creator course. This is one of her famous courses, and you are going to get the chance to enter to win it. And you'll see why here in just a moment when we start talking with her. Also, if you win today, you're going to win 10,000 credits from Data Ghost. Data Ghost is your best B2B data provider these days. We don't need to go out and spend a lot of money to get the data that's needed to be a really great salesperson and marketer. So contact Data Ghost, tag them, enter to win these prizes. Tara LaFon-Gooch, thank you for providing a 60-minute group class that she has every week on building your personal brand. And of course, Tom Slocum, he's offering a 30-minute cold call coaching session. So enter Data Ghost to enter to win these prizes. And without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to pull myself out here for just a second and get this ready for you. Here we go. That is not what we wanted. I apologize. Thank you so much for joining Whiskey Wednesday, Heather. This is a real treat for our audience.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think most people probably know you on LinkedIn. I mean, I think it was 2020. I just started seeing Heather Monahan in my feed anytime I opened up LinkedIn. And so, many of us know your story. But I'm really curious if you could. It's really powerful and it's really important for everybody to hear it. So could you please share with the Whiskey Wednesday audience a little about yourself, an intro, and also how you got to now with, your whole story kind of packed into one?
Yeah, so I was a chief revenue officer in media. I was in the media business for 25 years, very, very successful. And about 5 years ago now, I was named one of the most influential women in radio. And 3 weeks later, I was unexpectedly fired when the CEO I had worked for 14 years became ill, and he elevated his daughter to replace him. And that was the first time I'd ever worked for a woman. And it lasted for a very short window of time because she fired me immediately. And that led to, I had an 18-month non-compete, which meant I had to leave the industry that I had expertise in and start over somewhere as a beginner for 18 months. I'm a single mom. And so I had to get to work quickly. So I posted that I had just been fired and I asked for help. I said, if I've ever helped you, I need to hear from you today. And that post went viral and landed me on the Elvis Duran show. And halfway through that show, he looked at me and said, well, Heather, obviously you're writing a book. But I wasn't writing a book. I never thought about writing a book. But he spoke to me with such a conviction and confidence in me that I decided to accept it. And I said, you know what, you're right. I am writing a book. And that book is going to be out this year. And so I, made a commitment, held myself accountable. I jumped on a plane and I Googled, how do you write a book? And basically it says you have to sit down and write. And I thought, well, you know what? I've just been fired. I know how to sell. I need a product to sell. So this can be the product. And so I wrote my first book, Confidence Creator, in under 5 months, self-published it. In the first week, it came out at Donald Trump for #1 on the business biography list on Amazon. And yes, I have the screenshot to prove that one. And then that launched my speaking career because I was trying to sell books and I figured out you need to speak to sell books. And I had been speaking for 25 years. I had never been paid for it. I always did it as part of my job. And then suddenly I was getting paid for my speaking business. And that led to a global pandemic, which all of my speaking business disappeared overnight. I became a virtual speaker and then I landed a board seat with Health Corporation. Then I landed a deal with Harper Collins Leadership for Overcome Your Villains, launched my podcast, and the rest is history.
Well, you mentioned Overcome Your Villains. Could you just touch briefly on your book?
Yeah. So my second book is called Overcome Your Villains. It's a 3-step process to overcome any adversity in business or in your personal life. The 3 steps are beliefs, action, and knowledge. And the book is structured in that regard. And you can really start the book wherever you want, in the belief section, the action section, or knowledge section. But really what I did was I looked over my life and basically analyzed what was the simple process that I've used every time I find myself facing adversity, uncertainty, and challenge. And there's been tremendous adversity, uncertainty, and challenge in my life. And I know people oftentimes want to create a story when they see someone in real life or they see someone from far away. And I've gotten lots of messages and DMs saying, I bet you grew up really wealthy, or it must be so nice to have blonde hair and be a girl. I'd be successful too if that was the case. And to those people, I say, no, you wouldn't, because I had a really hard childhood. I have faced adversity left, right, and indifferent, and on double times on Wednesdays, right? So I have faced so much adversity in my life, and I've just learned that when I implement and defer to this 3-step process, I can get myself out of the adversity much more quickly and back on track to where I'm meant to be.
That's beautiful. And, I think I told you we talk normally about sales marketing alignment, but your story is so powerful. But really, it started off with you being this awesome salesperson who's able to help businesses grow. I mean, all this other stuff was just, at the end of the day, I don't want to say people just being jealous of you. So we have to navigate those situations in one way or another, or something like that. People they live in their own realities, have their own problems. But at the end of the day, you are a powerful, really great CRO, female saleswoman who was able to help teams grow. So I'm curious, since we're always talking about sales marketing alignment, what would be your #1 piece of advice for aligning teams, especially sales and marketing?
To getting sales teams to work in a positive fashion with a marketing team.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is, everything, right? So in any organization, to get any division to work in a positive fashion with another division, first of all, it starts with culture, right? So, and that truly is dictated from the top. And I've lived my entire career saying, no, I don't want to listen to that. I'm going to control my culture. And even if everybody else is acting like a bunch of jerks, we're going to be, amazing at communicating and following through on our word. And I did run my business, no matter where I was, no matter what company I worked for, that way. But the higher up you make it in any company, the more clear it is that culture really is dictated by that CEO and the board of directors, right? So they can cut you off at the knees anytime they want if they don't agree with something that you're doing. And so I was big into innovation. I was big into testing and trying. And I was in a traditional media company. They weren't big into that. So when I would lean too heavy into innovation, they'd cut me off. And that became frustrating. But back to your question, you know, when you're working on a sales team or leading a sales team and you want to find ways to better work with the marketing team, stop sending DMs, stop texting, call for one-on-one face-to-face meetings. So much is lost, I've found, in these worlds of we've got to move fast and break things, and I'm just going to send a quick note, and someone's like, gosh, they were curt, you know, what a jerk, I'm not going to respond to that person. And suddenly you've developed this fake fight out of someone misinterpreting, you know, a text message. So pause everything, bring yourself face to face, make people feel seen, heard, and give them the opportunity to empty their glass to you, and ask, hey, I want to know what kind of job I'm doing on my end. How's my team to work with? What are some of the opportunities that you think we have to improve? You start asking people questions like that, they're going to say, you know what, this person actually cares about my opinion. They value and see me as a partner. I want to work more closely with them, and I want to be better for them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Communication is key always. Kind of focusing in back to CROs, and, you know, pre-show we were talking a little bit about women CROs. Why do you think there aren't more women CROs, and what do you think needs to be done to get there?
There was a study done at the end of the pandemic. I don't remember who it was that put it out, but to ask that very specific question in the C-suite, why there's so few women. And there was a number of different answers that I found interesting. Some were around that the responsibility at home was just too large, given sick parents, sick children, no school, right? So many people get that whole variability of having to be an at-home working mom and be a principal and a teacher at the same time, you know, that put everybody over the edge. And women were seeing that as their responsibility for the most part. So I saw that as a very big reason why they felt they couldn't lean in and take larger jobs, more responsibility, and more time for work. So I think that's a big part of it. However, you look at someone like me, I ascended to the C-suite prior to the pandemic, and I was one of the only females that I know of that was, you know, in the C-suite. And the reasons I saw, or that from what I've heard from other people, is one, lack of confidence, right? Imposter syndrome. That's a huge deal with women. They feel like they don't warrant it, where men feel like they warrant it when they actually don't. And there's studies to justify that information as well. It is factual that men do not need to be 100% qualified for a job to feel they're qualified for it. Women have to be, and even when they are, still doubt that they're actually qualified for it, right? So there's a huge issue there. Thankfully for me, I never felt that I had to be 100% qualified for anything. I don't know why. I just, the way I grew up, I always, done is better than perfect to me. Like, I'll figure it out on my way. Have no idea what I'm doing, but you know what? I trust that I will. And that's how I became a great salesperson, how I became a strong sales leader, how I became a CRO. And that's essentially the methodology I took on when I became an entrepreneur. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what it took to write a book. I didn't know what it took to pivot and get into a speaking business and change that and become a board member and change that. And I didn't know how to do any of those things. I still don't, right? I'm always constantly figuring out how to do things along the way. So I think that imposter syndrome, that self-doubt, that lack of confidence is a huge, huge holdback for women. But the other piece is the commitment to home and family.
That's really great. And it leads into another question. So it's not public yet, but by the time this recording goes live, it'll be public that I'm moving on from my CMO role, and I'm going all in on myself with Reviting's Whiskey WinsDay, Reviting becoming a LinkedIn growth agency, and Whiskey WinsDay staying as it is and bringing in sponsors and helping to lift people in the SaaS community. And so, like, what would your advice be to me and so many other women who, I mean, I think you just gave it to me. It's like, because that's how I feel. So I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like building a road, and don't know where it's going, but I'm just going to build the road and see where it takes me. But what advice could you share with me?
Oh my gosh, right now you need to download the Audible version of my book. And whenever you're in the car, you need to listen to it, because it's going to give you the roadmap to exactly how I built my business. It starts from the day I got fired till right now. So that's going to help you immensely. I wish I had that roadmap. When I got fired, I didn't. That's why I created it, right? So I created my podcast and my books just for you. And for that reason, for anybody that's in a point of uncertainty and doesn't know how to get out of it and wants that roadmap and wants to know they're not alone and wants to know they're not crazy, right? So do that first and foremost. Understand that you have total control over the people you're surrounding yourself with, what you're doing with your time, and the content you're accessing. A lot of people forget that. They'll say, oh no, I always listen to Joe Rogan or this, or, this is what I always do. Well, pump the brakes for a second and say, what do you need for you right now? If your situation's changed, right? So mentally, you're not in the same place right now. Physically, you're not going to the same place, right? Like everything's kind of changed. There's uncertainty. What do you need right now? You can get back to Joe Rogan and all these other things later when you're back in your normal routine. But right now, it sounds like you probably need some additional support, right? So you want to tap the people in your life that you can say, hey, I really need you to check in on me once a week. Here's what I need. Ask for what you need. Ask for help. That's something very strong people do. Then start accessing the content and the people on social media, TED Talks, books, whatever it may be, podcasts, that you want to dig into to give yourself that bump up and that lift when you need it, because you're going to need it. In your old role, you might have been, okay, I know what to expect at work today. I'd rather just kind of get away from work. So when I'm outside of work, I want to get stuff that distracts me from it. I've heard that from a lot of people. But right now, what you need is, accessing information that's going to support you to help you grow along this journey, because no one succeeds alone. And you don't need everybody to be there right by your side doing it. Some of it can be, like I said, through a TED Talk or a book or whatever, but just be really intentional about what you're accessing, who you're listening to, and don't take advice or direction from someone who hasn't been where you want to go.
What were you listening to during that time?
For me, I like to be around more like-minded people. So if I'm in a really dark place and really concerned about getting by and succeeding, I want to listen to Oprah Winfrey and hear about how she came from nothing and fought out of a hole. So I like to hear from like-minded people who've done it what I want to do. So it's more about tapping into those shows and those books and those podcasts where people are sharing how they bounced back from termination, or they turned a negative situation around and took a rejection and made it into a redirection.
Oh, that's really great. Thanks for sharing, because I'm always looking for new things to listen to, because I don't want to say I'm in that dark place right now. I wasn't fired. It was a choice I made, but I am in a very confusing place, I will say. So yeah, probably a good idea to maybe listen to some Oprah stories. So moving along, you brought up, reach out to people. How about mentorship? I know you talk about mentorship a lot. You had a mentor that you spoke about. And so can you speak to the importance of mentorship and sponsorship in the workplace? Because, right now, so many women are struggling. There was an MIT Sloan article. I shared it yesterday. And it's basically showing all the data for how women are still the ones carrying the load of the post-pandemic era. They are having more physical problems in the health place. They are having more stress and mental health problems in the workplace. So, speaking of mentorship and women in the workplace now, not just C-suite, but all women in the workplace, even those who are struggling to get up from the very bottom, can you speak to everyone about the importance of mentorship, how to find them, how to seek them, but also how to help others, how to help lift as you rise?
Yeah. So, my biggest mentor, who still is my mentor, it's funny, I just spoke to him yesterday, and we're not, really in the same industry anymore. He's still in my old industry. But life is interesting, and someone who really cares about you and is invested in your growth will find ways to help you whenever they can, as he always does. But what I will say is the way that I got him to become my mentor was, people aren't out, successful people aren't standing around just like with a sign, hey, I want to mentor people. Right. Successful people are super busy, right? And they don't have a lot of time. So I knew I needed to add value. People need to get this message in life. Add value first, then you could ask for something, right? And so when I identified him as someone really successful, much further along in the career, someone who was where I wanted to go, I thought, how can I get him to notice me? He was actually my partner. I was his client at the time. And so I got time with him, right? But it was to talk about our projections, our business, and what we were working on together. But I wanted time outside of that to talk about my life and my career. And I was a lot younger than him, right? So he really liked to focus just on business in our meetings, which was fine. And I understood it. So one day I asked him for, what I wanted. I said, is there ever a chance that I could meet with you on your time schedule, whenever works for you, and talk a little bit about my career and hear what you see in me, or what you see, how I could do better. Like, I really want to access your wisdom. And I said, to that end, your team is my age. How about I sit with you whenever you have free time, if you're open to it, and I'll give you a little bit of an idea, some better ways you could communicate with them, because I'm out there on the floor with them and I hear what they say, I hear what frustrates them, and I can see some really simple tweaks that we could make that could allow your message to land better and stronger with them. And he laughed at first, and then he thought about it and he said, yeah. So he said he got to work really early. He's like, be here tomorrow at 7 a.m. and let's talk about how you think you can help me and my team. I said, okay, great, let's do it. And so I went, I got him coffee, I got him bagels. I was there early, right? Like I was there at 6:45. So he was blown away when he walked in that he's always the first person in the office, and I was there before him. And we sat and I went through very specific examples of things I had heard. And then I gave him very specific examples of ways that I thought he could change some verbiage and some communication via email, and incentivize them in ways that I thought they'd get excited, that would be creative and fun for the team. And so he implemented one of these ideas. It went really well. He came back to me and said, thank you, a couple of weeks later. And he said, I know that you had mentioned you wanted some time with me too. Why don't you, the next time you come to New York, why don't you come into the office again at 7 in the morning, and we'll do 30 minutes. Instead of talking about me and my team, we'll talk about you and your team and whatever your goals are. And that's how our relationship started.
It's brilliant. It's the same thing in what I talk about, like content and LinkedIn growth. It's like share value in your content first before you just start pitch slapping people. So that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And like in terms of advocacy for yourself and for others, so there's finding mentorship, but then there's also just taking care of ourselves, but also others. Like, can you talk about maybe a specific instance where you had to advocate for yourself or others in the workplace?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I was in a toxic work environment, right? Read my book, you'll hear about it. But there were so many. One example was the company I used to work for 14 years did not honor maternity leave. And so they would not honor it. Now,
I'm sorry.
Prior to me having a child, I have a 15-year-old son. So there was a time that I worked there that I had never had a child. And then there was a time I gave birth while working there. And 10 days after I gave birth, I had a C-section. The CEO called me and told me to get on a plane and go give a speech for him. And I did it. And I look back on that time in my life. First of all, ignorance is bliss, right? So if you haven't had a child and you're being told this is policy here, you're like, it seems kind of weird because most companies have that. I don't really understand.
And it's the law,
why we don't. Well, no, I mean, legally, all they have to do is offer a family leave.
That's true. Yeah. The 3 months unpaid.
For anyone listening, right? You can take the time off. You're not going to be paid.
Right.
And so 90% of people working are there because they want to get paid, not because they just like the job, right? So to me, that's no policy. I couldn't take the time. I needed the money. So as most people that worked for me did. So, I had brought it up a couple of times that I didn't think that it made sense that all of our competitors offered it, and it just really seemed like a bad look for us. And I was told, very dismissive, it is what it is. And, just don't bring it up again. Okay. Then I had a child. I went through that experience where 10 days later, I had to get on a plane and go to work.
Are you kidding me?
No, this is true. And
I'm sorry.
The pictures, it's so bad. It's like, you ever want to see the worst pictures of me ever? It was giving that speech 10 days after giving birth. That looked terrible.
It's not fair.
Listen, I had a choice, right? This is a free country. I could have said no.
Right.
So those are the things that I look back on. I would handle it incredibly different today at 48 than I handled it at 32. Right. But I didn't have the confidence back then that I have now. I didn't know what I know now. Right.
What would you have done differently?
Had I been working for a CEO that called me 10 days after giving birth and told me to go board a plane, I'd say, hang on a second.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. I guess you didn't hear. I just gave birth, actually just got out of the hospital, and I had a C-section. Listen, I'm going to go ahead and shoot you a couple of pictures of my infant. I'm going to hang up right now, send you the pictures, call me back after you've seen them. I would send the pictures to the CEO, have him call me back. When he'd call me back, I'd say, did you see my brand new baby? What do you think? Do you remember when your child was that age? Oh my gosh, what was that like for you? Like, I'd engage like a human being and have a human conversation. And then I'd say, now, I had a C-section, so I'm not fully healed. I'm sure there's someone more appropriate for this trip right now. What about Brian or Bruce? Which one do you think is the better ask? And I think we should call them. And then I would it wouldn't be a second thought to me. I wouldn't be panicking or concerned. It would just be handled. However, back then I wasn't confident. I was scared that I'd be replaced. And so knee-jerk reaction, I jumped up with my breast pump machine, got on a plane, and it was not my best look. So anyhow, so the reason why, I even bring that up is just that whole window of time, my perspective changed immensely. I finally knew firsthand what it's like to be in that situation and how egregious and ridiculous it is. Cut to, after that, I advocated more and more for maternity leave, which it was never approved, right? The entire time I worked there. And I was in battles in the boardroom about it, fall down arguments at the boardroom table, and was never approved. Cut to, I'm fired and I'm out on my own. And I get a DM one day from one of my past employees, who was a woman who worked for me. And she sent me the saddest DM, and it said, Heather, I've hated you for years. I always thought you created the policy of no maternity leave in our company because you were the one because I was in charge of the sales division for the company. So I conveyed it. So because I conveyed it, she thought I created it. And so she had read in my book that story about how upset I was and how I fought and nearly got fired over it many times, and how badly she felt. And it taught me an interesting lesson that when you work for a company, you become the company, whether you want to or not. So be really, really careful who you're working with. I was working with people who were making poor decisions out of selfishness, and I was working in a toxic environment, but I was the face to my people. So I became the toxic environment. I became, the poor decision maker. I became the selfish one because I had to convey the message. So never again in my life, and I encourage, never work for people who are not on the same page with you. If something is really, on your heart, you're going to have to get up and say, I deserve better than this, and so do my people. I'm going to have to look elsewhere if I can't change it.
You're absolutely right. You have to live your truth, because if you don't, it's never going to get better. It's only going to get worse. I've been in that same position where you think you're going to work your way out of it. You're going to muscle through it. You're going to get past this. But really, it just comes down to being honest with yourself and knowing like what makes you tick and what's best for you, and so thank you for sharing that. That's a lesson I've had to learn myself too. But moving on, I'm curious. So, this is always a hard question for me. No one wants to talk about their own failures, but can you share a failure or a setback you've experienced in your career and what you've learned from it?
Oh my gosh, so many. The first one that comes to mind is I was a partner, an equity partner in a private equity firm in my early 20s, did incredibly well. We bought a company for 25 million, sold it for 55 million, netted my partners. Wow. I got a small percentage, but they got a large percentage of that 30 million. Anyways, we did very well, landed me on the map. I was super proud of myself. But the contingency of the deal was I could not work with my partners anymore because the company that bought us was trying to force me to stay and run the new company, which I wasn't going to do. So I said to my partner, all right, what should I do if I can't work with you? Which I do. He said, oh, go to Florida. You should go run this big publicly traded company. It's a step up for you. It's going to teach you another side of the business. Go get experience there. And then after our non-compete runs out, we'll work together again. So I flew down to meet with a company that I ended up going to work for. And I had to take a huge step back in order to get in. Here's what I knew about business at the time. You need to have someone's trust. If you really want someone to elevate you to a very high level, typically they're not going to do it not knowing you. They need to trust you, right? So, and this goes for landing a board seat. This goes for so many, landing a big deal. People need to trust that you're going to steward the business, the relationship in the right regard. And so I agreed to take a smaller role, a much smaller role than I had. I agreed to take a pay and cut. And, I agreed to all these things they didn't look right on paper. And within 8 months, I became the #1 division in the company. We were killing it, winning all these awards. And I called the president of the company and I said, now that I have your trust, now that you know firsthand what I can do within your organization, I'm sitting here today because I'm going to pitch you on a job you haven't posted yet, you haven't created yet, you need a VP of sales for the entire country, not just for different regions. And here's why. And here's what that's going to extrapolate into from a revenue standpoint. Here's how it's going to benefit you, the shareholders, et cetera. So I give him this whole pitch. And he's listening, and he smiles. He's like, thank you. What a great idea. You're doing so amazing. We're so grateful to have you. However, you're doing so well. We want to keep you where you are. Let's finish lunch and let you go back to work. And so that, I didn't have a child back then. And that day I left and I thought, well, gosh, I earned his trust. I showed him what I could do. He doesn't value me. So I started dialing for dollars. I started calling other companies and I was going to leave. And so I landed another big job back in Boston, which is where I was from. I was probably 30 years old at this time, maybe 29. And I called him 2 weeks later and I said, because I always believe in meeting face to face. If you're asking for something important, your likelihood of landing the yes is so much higher. And so I said, let's meet again for lunch today. I have some important things to talk about. And I was going to resign. And so we sit down and I said, have you thought any more about my proposition? And he said, no, not really. And I said, okay, well then I'm here today to resign. And he's like, what are you talking about? You're resigning. I said, yeah, I mean, I have worked so hard for you. I've done an amazing job. I'm number one in the company. I've shown you a very small scale what I can do. I gave you the pitch as to what I could do for you on a large scale. You don't believe in me. And it's not out of trust because you trust me. I know you do because you've seen what I can do. You know me. So you just don't think I'm capable and I deserve better than that. And so I'm going to go take a big job in Boston. And he said, can you hold tight for a minute, please? And I said, sure. And he walked out of the restaurant. He was gone for 5 minutes and he came back and he said, I want to know if you'll accept the newly created position of VP of sales for the company. And I said, well, let me ask you one question. Where did you go? And he said, well, I had to call my father, the CEO, to get approval. And it taught me this incredible lesson in the moment, which is never take a no from someone who can't ever give you a yes. And I almost did. I almost quit that day to go take this other job when he was never the right guy to ask for the role. So he ends up giving me the role. I get promoted. I'm promoted 3 different times. As you know, I ultimately become the chief revenue officer. And then that's the company I got fired from.
Wow. What a story. That is amazing. I mean, it's not amazing that it happened, but it's amazing you were able to work your way up from that, because so many people would have just, as you were telling it, I was thinking, I probably would have just said, I'm over you anyway, just based on what happened. I'm just going to hop on a plane and go to Boston and take this other opportunity where my family lives. But you were able to get past it. I think that took strength too, like not feeling any animosity against, the boss's son. But yeah, I think that really speaks really highly of you, Heather. You've always been able to put people in a place where, I don't know, it's just like you grow and nothing stops you, and so I want to be able to do that. And I think it comes down to not being so reactionary to other people. So I think that's a really big skill that I've picked up just from watching you on LinkedIn and talking with you now. But I want to make sure we cover all these questions. And I'm really curious about work-life balance, because I'm also a mother. I have 2 kids. And I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I couldn't be more proud that my daughter just got, I got a letter that she's gifted in math. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, 99th percentile in math. She gets to go on all these programs, but it's a lot, so there's places to drive them. And I want to take her to swimming and I'll make sure she's in all our gifted programs. And then I have a 4-year-old who will be in kindergarten before I know it. So can you discuss your thoughts on work-life balance and how you maintain it in your personal and professional life? And especially as you ventured off onto your own, which I'm about to do, and that's where it's like, there are no hours, the more you work, the more you're able to get done, but you have to still prioritize life and work-life balance. So how do you do it?
First, I want to just make one comment to what you were saying prior to this question, which is around not reacting. And this is huge. And I just want everyone to hear this loud and clear. Always respond, don't react. When you react, you're allowing someone else to puppeteer you and control you. Know that you do not let anyone control you. You control yourself. And I really train myself through discipline to remind myself, if I'm going to start yelling right now or flip my lid or walk out, I'm letting them know they control me. Oh, heck no, no one is controlling this girl over here, right? So I always stay very, very calm. Even though I might not be inside at all, I just want them to know, oh, you're not controlling me. I will be in charge of myself. And I really want everyone listening to think of that the next time you're in a really difficult situation. It's tumultuous. There's a lot going on. You're upset. You're triggered. just inform the face that we are just fine because we are not reacting to anybody. It's really, really powerful. It's a great jujitsu move in mental warfare in the office. Okay.
Poker face.
Yes, a poker face is really good. I'm terrible at the poker table, but I'm really good in the boardroom. So in regards to work-life balance, I don't really believe in work-life balance. Like I always say, it's just BS, but
yeah.
Here's the thing. I'll give you two different stories around work-life balance. One was back when I was in corporate America, which in my opinion, working for a corporate entity is much harder with work-life balance than owning your own company. That's just, yes, you work more when you're an entrepreneur, but you're in charge of it, right? So my son is sitting next to me doing homework at night. I'm sitting next to him working on proposals, where before I'd be in another state, right? Because my boss called and I had to take a trip. And, so you're dictating. Yeah, you can keep them close and in proximity. Like there's different ways that I just feel like it's easier. But then again, my son's 15 now, so life is just easier because I don't have little ones, right? It's just harder when they're little. There's more, they need you more, right? My son just needs to talk to me. He doesn't need me to, tie his shoes. So it's a little bit different around the age and the timing, but I do think it's easier when you own your own company. So one situation that arose when I was in corporate, I had an event I had to attend. It was a huge sponsored event. So we had sponsors coming from all over the country, spending millions of dollars with us. I had to be there to entertain the clients. And so I went to Philadelphia for the weekend for this 2-day event. My son had soccer while I was gone. My ex-husband couldn't make it for whatever, like life happens. Maybe he had a meeting. I don't know. Maybe he was sick. My son ends up at his game alone and gets injured. And so I'm in Philadelphia, his dad's, somewhere else, and he's by himself and they think he might have a broken leg. So I get a message on my phone saying, call immediately, your son's in trouble. And I'm like, oh, mother of the year, here I am. I'm out at a work event in Philadelphia. This is so embarrassing. It's so awful. My poor kid alone. But here's the beauty of what happened is that what I thought was this horrible situation ended up being this gift. Meaning there was another mother that was there with her kids and she saw my son alone and struggling. She went and sat with him for the entire rest of the game, held him, cared for him, asked if she could take him to the hospital. Like she jumped in as this person, this angel to help my son. And they created a bond in that moment and a friendship in that moment. And it was his friend's mom and he knew her. And it taught him this lesson that even though my mom or dad isn't there, there's always going to be people that are going to show up and want to help me. It isn't just one or two people in life that are going to be on your team and your tribe. There's thousands, right? There's people everywhere and there's good people everywhere. So it ended up, and I was so grateful and she felt so proud that she was able to help. Like it was just a great story all the way around and my son was fine. So that was a gift that my son learned that lesson and I learned that lesson. Cut to in the pandemic, as I had mentioned, my speaking business disappeared overnight and that was super stressful. Even a thing. I don't think anyone did virtual speaking back then. So that wasn't a thing yet. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm like, wow, how am I going to make money? How am I going to pay my bills? Right back to where I was, when I got fired. And right at that time, my son went to virtual school, no sports, no seeing your friends. I don't remember how old he was then, but maybe 10, something like that. 11, 12, I don't know. But it was a time where this is like the end of the world that you can't be with kids. You're alone at home with your mom and his dog drowned. Oh, my son was so down and out, almost depressed. I'd never seen him like that before. And I remember thinking, I need to go all into work right now to fix this and create money. And then I saw my child. And it was one of those moments that you're like, I'm going to worry about the money thing later. I know how to do that. But what's happening with my kid right now, I don't know if I can come back to that later. I'm going to drop everything and I'm going to go all in on this. And so what I've learned is life is like, you have to constantly evaluate where you needed most and then be present and show up in those moments. And, he and I would just sit on the couch and watch funny movies and like anything he wanted to do that would make him feel better and feel seen and feel supported and go for a walk outside or just, whatever was going to help him in that moment. And that became my number one focus for a couple of months until I saw him start to come out of it and become more back to who he really is. And as that happened, then I was like, bro, I got to get back to work right now. I'm going to go lead over into this. Otherwise we're not going to pay our mortgage this month. So, it's a constant and forever evolving and changing dynamic that you have to surrender to. Yeah, you can't control it all. My friend is going through a really hard time with his kids right now. And it's so hard because he's had it so good for so long. The difference of having older kids and being older is you know these things are temporary. It's not going to be forever. And it's hard to tell someone who's going through it in the moment. But I try. Tough times don't last. Tough people do. They're going to survive. You're going to survive. It sucks right now. And I know nothing makes that better. But fast forward 1 year from now, this isn't happening anymore. You've just got to get through this window of time. And the more you go through tough times and experience them, you understand it's okay to shift off work for a little while to jump into this when you're needed. It's not going to be like that forever.
You're so right. And like, as you were telling that story again, like I haven't had that situation with a dog dying yet. We did have a hamster die. It was quite devastating. And it took a toll on my daughter as well. And I saw the same thing, and I had to do the same thing you did. And it's almost like you just have to let go of all your stress, and just like, I can't deal with that right now. There's a bazillion things I need to do, but I just can't. And it's really the hardest thing, but I'm glad that that's what you call work-life balance, because that makes me feel like I'm doing it right. So thank you for that. I think that's the new modern approach to work-life balance, in my opinion, is just being able to walk away from the stressfulness when you have to, and making it okay. I love how you said you had that story about, it took a tribe in that one instance with your son hurting his leg, and it ended up being a beautiful story. I love that. I think that's so powerful. And I hope that our audience takes something away from that, there are these stories that have been told that's happened to other women. It's a reason women don't want to travel. It's a reason, we don't want to climb the ladder, but that's an old fable. And like, this is the new story. This is the new normal. The new normal is the tribe will help, and women are a part of the working society now. And so like, we can create new stories. So you're paving the way with like that narrative right there is extremely powerful, Heather. And I have two more questions. The last one's one we do every week. It's the Guru of the Week. We ask all of our guests, who is somebody that you think everybody should follow on LinkedIn? But before we get to that, the last one, we were talking earlier, like right now, women are bearing the brunt of the pandemic era more than men. MIT data is sorting it all out. It's not even a question anymore. Women leaders are more transient now than ever before too. So what is your advice to women like myself who are trying to decide, do you prioritize your mental and physical health or continue to try to climb the corporate ladder?
Why can't you do both, right? I've always done both. So the most important thing is take care of yourself first, right? And that, for me, that's working out. For me, that's, sleeping enough. For me, that's not traveling excessively so that I'm losing my mind and not knowing what city I'm waking up in anymore. Like, these are some of the things I used to do to myself because I thought I've got to hit more marks than anyone to show that I can be a mother and I can out travel everyone. That's when I was putting all the self-worth on things outside of me. Put that self-worth on inside of you. Like, oh, I had a great night's sleep last night. I'm going to come up with much more efficient and better answers today. And I'm going to help the company and drive more revenue, right? So start believing in yourself more, caring for yourself more. And as you do that, start asking yourself, what is it you really want to do? Don't go after the C-suite if it's not you that wants it. Start asking yourself, what do I really want? Forget what the rest of the world tells you. It's so irrelevant. Ask, what do you really want? Like, what does success really look like to you? It might look incredibly different than what anybody else thinks it is. For me now, with a 15-year-old, it is incredibly different than what, a 30-year-old woman who doesn't have kids thinks of, right? Everything, depending where you are in your life, if you're married, if you're not married, if you're dating, if you're not dating, if you have children, if you don't, if you own a home, if you don't, if you're thinking of moving, right? All of these things matter. Figure out for you what success looks like for you, and then go after it, because you can have it.
Well, thank you. That's a really great answer. And with that, let's end with the Guru of the Week, which I usually do. Guru of the Week. I usually sing a song to it. But I don't know if you know Ding Zhang. He's a rapper. He's going to come on the 8th and make a new guru rap for me. So maybe we'll have that by the time this airs. But if you had to pick one person that you would tell the Whiskey WinsDay audience they should all go follow, it could be someone, who's already a big name, or it could be an up-and-comer. Who do you enjoy consuming content from that you think we all should go follow?
Well, I'm going to have dinner right now with the woman who runs my social media agency. Her name's Hala Taha, and she is someone who I met during the pandemic. She was working at Disney. I talked her into quitting her corporate job and starting her own company. Her company is killing it, and she's such a great example of a young woman. She's so much younger than me, no children, right? She's out 2 years into her own business and making millions of dollars. I mean, this is someone who just leapt, believed in herself, figured it out along the way, and her business has exploded. And they're just incredible to work with. I'm so proud of her. And it's just someone who's at a very, very different stage in their life and career, but has found huge success and is so happy.
I love watching Hala Taha. So if you get a chance, I've invited her on a couple times. So I'll send her another email. So it's at the top, but I would love to get her onto the Whiskey Wednesday audience sometime. She is just amazing. You're right. I had no idea she was your social media manager.
Yeah, she owns Yap Media. So she manages my social media, my podcast, all my things.
Wow. Well, you heard it here, Whiskey Wednesday audience. Now we know who's running your social media. No, that's amazing. Well, wow, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I didn't know that Hala Taha worked at Disney, but you said it was a corporate job at Disney.
Yeah, she was one of the people that ran social media for Disney. Yeah, she's
Wow.
done remarkable things in her career at a very young age.
Wow. That is amazing. Yeah, no, well, everybody should definitely go follow Hala Taha if you're not yet. She's someone just like you who I feel like for years I've just been following and watching and consuming content from on LinkedIn. And now here I am talking to you, and it almost feels surreal. I'll be really honest with you, but I guess for anybody watching, that's what comes from consistency, and that's what I've been able to do. I mean, for a year now, every Wednesday I've been showing up, having a show, bringing on people, not making money, just give, giving gifts, giving content. And now, now that I've done that and I put my name out there, I'm starting to get clients and starting to get people like yourself who will spend time coming to talk with me. And so it is all very possible. So I hope that this conversation will maybe help inspire the next generation of women to, lift others as they rise as well. So thank you for everything you do.
Oh, thank you.
I am muted. We still have to do the giveaways. So if you're here wanting to see who won, let's just do a quick reminder. I know everybody's almost finishing up their lunch if you're on the East Coast here, but want to remind you what we're giving away today. If you're still with us on YouTube and Facebook primarily, I know Twitch, there's a couple of you there too. But yeah, LinkedIn went kaput. I hope that tonight we won't have any issues. But Confidence Creator Courses by Heather Monahan. You heard her today. I mean, she's awesome. You're going to want to take her course. There's a lot to be gained, as well as a 30-minute coaching call with Tom Slocum on your cold calls. And Tara LaFon-Gooch wants to give you 60 minutes in her personal branding course. And then Data Ghost has 10,000 credits, new B2B data enrichment tools. So I've been using it. Anytime I meet anyone, I just plug in their name and then their domain, and boom, I can find their email. So thank you, Data Ghost. And if you want to win these prizes and you have not entered Data Ghost, go to Facebook or YouTube. You cannot do this on Twitter or Twitch. You need to be on Facebook or YouTube. And you have to write Data Ghost. You don't need the @ unless you can tag them. But you just want to write Data Ghost in the comments to enter to win these. And it looks like a couple of you just added your name, so that's great. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll do the regular draw here. Let's see. Too bad we had so many technical difficulties today. Are we ready, everybody? Need to get the music ready. Here we go. Who's gonna be? Who's it gonna be? Do. Woo! Lauren, maybe Mia, maybe Alexa, maybe Rachel, maybe Chris. Lauren! Congratulations, Lauren! you won Whiskey WinsDay's lunch hour. So I'm glad that you poked in. That is amazing. Let me get some things off the screen here. But yeah, congratulations to Laura Sermon. She is awesome. She is a recruiter. So definitely go follow her. I'll keep her name up here for a second. Looks like she entered to win on Facebook. So thank you. But she is very active on LinkedIn. She posts every day and she has a LinkedIn accountability group. So I don't know when her sessions are starting, but maybe that's something you're interested in if you want to get some accountability in terms of your posting on LinkedIn. Let's go build your credibility. But with that, it's been a great day. I hope you can join us tonight. We do have some awesome guests coming on tonight, Melanie Borden and Jackie Hermes. It's going to be a good one. So come in, check it out. And with that, thank you everybody for tuning in. I am going to go ahead and get prepared for tonight, call StreamYard support and make sure that we don't have any more issues. But I'll probably do a replay on this one just to make sure that the folks on LinkedIn got to hear this important message. So thanks, everyone. We'll chat with you later.